Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to all our friends in Vietnam. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which we're meeting in Canberra here today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. So thank you all for joining us today for this information session on the Business Partnerships Platform, or the BPP as we call it. It's great to see so much interest in our Vietnam Green Recovery Call for Partnerships. I'd like to start with just some housekeeping. We've set all of your microphones to mute, just so that everyone can hear the presentation today. We're very happy to take any questions and answers that you might have. Please type any questions that you have into the Q&A box. And if there's a question there that someone else has raised, which you're very interested in as well, or have the same question, please like it or vote for it, and that will help us to answer the questions that resonate with most people first. We'll aim to answer all of your questions today. If we can't answer it within the time that we've got, we will respond to you by email. And this session will be recorded, so if you miss anything, it will be available for you to review later. And the slides will be made available to you as well. So I just would like the opportunity to introduce myself. My name's Sally Trung. I'm the Director of the Private Sector Partnerships section in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in the Australian Government. We manage the Business Partnerships Platform program. And with me today in my team, I also have Lauren Sewell, who's our Senior Policy Officer, and Robin Begnor from our Australian Embassy in Vietnam. He's our First Secretary, Economic and Development Corporation. And from Palladium, who is helping us to implement the program, I have Ariane Gauchard, who's our team leader for the Business Partnerships Platform, and Ha Dang, who's our program manager for the BPP as well. So let's get started. In today's session, we'd like to give you a bit of information to help you with your application. So a little bit about the program itself, Australia's engagement with the private sector, and how the BPP works through a partnership model. Robin from our Australian Embassy in Vietnam will talk about the BPP in Vietnam, including private sector engagement within our work there at the embassy, the BPP partnerships we're supported in Vietnam, and also the Vietnam Call for Partnerships, which has a climate and energy focus. Ariane will then cover the application and selection process, including eligibility, the selection criteria, the application process and form, a little bit more detail on what we mean by co-contribution requirements, and some resources that you can access to help you with your application. And then we will have a Q&A session. So about the Business Partnerships Platform. The Business Partnerships Platform was established in 2015, and it supports partnerships between the Australian Government, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and inclusive businesses to create both development impacts and sustainable commercial returns. And we work through core business models with our business partners. To date, the BPP has 33 partnerships across 16 countries. We've been able to leverage from the funding that we have provided $25.9 million from our private sector and other partners through the BPP. We've been able to support 5.3 million people, 2.7 million, which have been women, to give them access to products and services that have helped them to improve their livelihoods. And 160,000 people have been provided with better job and income opportunities through the program. So the BPP and the Australian Government is really looking to work with our partners to help build back better from the impacts of the global pandemic. We understand, and you'll probably all understand, that the global pandemic is currently the overriding challenge for our region. But we really see that in order to be able to support economic recovery, and particularly green recovery, that private sector is a critical accelerator of inclusive growth. And there's an opportunity through our Business Partnerships Platform to support the expansion of inclusive businesses practices throughout the region, and particularly in Vietnam in this case, and to build resilient economies. So the Australian government is really working collectively with the private sector in our development program to embed the private sector as strategic partners. We see that COVID has presented a range of opportunities and challenges for Australia and our partner countries in the region. And capital is really critical to re-establishing markets and value chains and helping the region and Australia to respond and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 presents an opportunity for Australian, international and local business in partner countries to support their interests in the region and to help them to diversify their regional supply chains. And Australia is working with businesses to achieve development goals. We're using our development assistance in markets in our region to leverage private sector expertise and ingenuity and to help achieve economic recovery, to reduce poverty and to drive sustainable growth. We really see that businesses bring a lot of efficiencies, innovation and ingenuity to partnerships that help the Australian government to support our development partners in the region to achieve their development goals and outcomes. So what value can you as a business derive from a BPP partnership? Well, there's a range of things that we'll be able to support you with. The Australian government can help you with a connection to an extensive network through the networks that we have. We can help to build your capability to capture and report on the social impacts that you're achieving through your business initiatives. We provide catalytic funding for your business initiatives. We have a lot of gender expertise and to help to strengthen your social and commercial impacts. And we have a very robust safeguards and standards and practices that can help you to support those elements of your practices. And the Australian government has a national brand and national recognition. So the BPP is really working through a partnership model. It's the key defining feature of how we work. And the partnerships that we enter into with businesses through the BPP are driven by having shared priorities together, where we're working towards the same goals. We have open communication and we're accountable to each other. We work together to share risks and the benefits from the initiatives that we take together. And it helps us to be more together than we can be alone, bringing out all of our strengths that we have to the partnership to deliver on outcomes and also to help us to collaborate together. So we really recognise that the businesses have a lot to bring, and coupled with the things that we can have to offer, we're able to support partnerships that really can deliver those long-lasting sustainable outcomes into the future. So I'll just hand over to Robin Bednall from our Australian Embassy to talk a little bit about the BPP in Vietnam.
Thanks very much, Sally. Can you just give me a wave to make sure that the audio and video are working okay?
Just turn off the video.
Yep, okay, great. Well, I will kick off. So I thought what I would do from the Hanoi Embassy perspective was just to give a very quick overview of where we've been with the BPP in Vietnam in recent years, why we've selected this particular focus on energy and climate change and why that matters for Vietnam and Australia's policy goals here. And then thirdly, to finish on what we're sort of looking for projects in this round. So just to get started, so for those of you who are familiar with Australia's aid program in Vietnam over the last 5 years in particular, one of the 3 core focus areas of Australia's aid program engagement in Vietnam has been to help the Vietnamese government enable the private sector for development. And within that context, the business partnerships platform has been a really important vehicle to help us in enabling the private sector and in improving the environment for the private sector to flourish. We've had 3 projects here that have been funded by the BPP since its inception. And Vietnam has been amongst the countries of the highest demand for BPP funding, because there's a range of really innovative, really interesting ideas that businesses and their counterparts here have. And we very much hope to see some of those at play going forward. But just to recap some of the things that we've done in past. So the projects we've had here have been quite diverse. So on the one hand, from 2016 to 2018, we had a partnership with Mary Stopes International and the Phu Group, which is a factory in Ho Chi Minh City. And that was a partnership to provide sexual and reproductive health services for the 45,000 female factory workers in the Phu Yen factory just outside Ho Chi Minh City. And that's a pretty good example of ways the BPP has been used to deliver what we call this shared value outcome, where the business gets a bottom line impact. In this case, for Phu Yen, it was having their workers healthier, more productive and at work for longer, but also a social impact. And in this case, it was ensuring that those critical services could be extended to workers to keep them healthy, productive and happy in their employment. Another classic example we have, and I think we'll talk about this a bit further along in the presentation today, that's been a very successful project in Vietnam, has been the Mobile Banking for the Poor project. So that was a partnership between DFAT, MasterCard, the Asia Foundation and the Vietnam Bank for Social Policies. And that developed a mobile banking platform which helps low-income populations access banking services. And again, that was a very clear example of shared value. So for VPSB, they were able to fulfill their mandate of extending financial services to low-income and remote populations, but at the same time also expand their customer base. And that's exactly the kind of partnership that has served us really well and helped us achieve those headline development goals with the BPP in the past, and one of the reasons why we're such strong supporters of the BPP and really pleased that it's continuing here in Vietnam. So let me talk to my second point, which is about why we've now selected climate and energy as the focus area for this round of the BPP that we are running in Vietnam. So as Sally mentioned in her opening remarks, the Australian government is now very focused on recovery from COVID-19. In late May, our Foreign Minister released a new global development policy, our Partnerships for Recovery policy, which has set out Australia's efforts to support recovery, both economic and social, from COVID-19 in all of the countries in our region. And under that policy in Vietnam, we have a COVID response plan, which sets out a range of actions that we will take to support the Vietnamese government in its response to COVID-19. And while, of course, for those in Vietnam, you will all know that Vietnam has been incredibly decisive and incredibly responsive to the challenges of COVID-19 and handled it much better than many other countries. Yet still, like all countries, it's suffering from very severe economic impacts, and many of those economic impacts are outside of its control. So the CRP that we're implementing is helping the Vietnamese government to continue to maintain pro-growth policies and support economic recovery. And as Sally mentioned, build back better from COVID-19. And within that context, the CRP sets out that energy and climate resilience are really important factors to promote stability and ensure that Vietnam can recover sustainably from COVID-19 and continue its growth in coming years. Vietnam has also implemented a range of key policy commitments that the CRP will connect to. So in July last year, Vietnam updated its nationally determined contribution to the UNFCCC Paris Agreement. And that will mean a unilateral reduction of 9% of its greenhouse gas emissions compared to its business as usual scenario, or up to 27% if international support is provided. And then, of course, in February last year, the Politburo also issued a new resolution on energy development, setting out the party's energy strategy for Vietnam. And that includes very ambitious targets for scaling up renewable energy. So both of those policies we really see as setting important policy targets that Australia's COVID-19 Development Response Plan is seeking to contribute to, and are really, in a policy sense, what we see the Business Partnerships Platform Energy and Climate Round as contributing to. I should say, lastly, just in terms of policy developments, Vietnam is really in a very exciting space in this field. Many of you on the line will be familiar that there's been an explosion of renewable energy investment. Vietnam, set, for example, a 1 gigawatt target on rooftop solar generation, and has exceeded that by 9 times already. So there's a lot happening in this space. There's a lot of interest by investors, and there's a lot of potential to do a lot more. But of course, with all that excitement and all that potential comes a lot of challenges about how you manage the grid, about how you incorporate these new forms of, dispersed dispatchable power, as well as the growing pains of climate adaptation and managing the ongoing climate impacts that Vietnam is experiencing from climate change, which were very painfully brought home by floods late last year. So that's kind of the policy framework for why Australia has selected the focus on climate and energy for the BPP for this round. So let me now move to my final point, which is what we're looking for in Vietnam. So as I mentioned, all of this fits within our overall support for COVID-19 recovery. And we really see that businesses have a really important role to play in supporting that recovery. We've been saying for years, and including before the pandemic struck, that Vietnam needs more and greater business engagement to deliver on its development priorities in a sustainable manner. And we really see the BPP as being a really important part of achieving that. So what we're looking for is to partner with businesses to implement initiatives that are supporting green economic recovery from COVID-19 with a specific focus on climate and renewable energy. So what we're looking for is innovation, and where we've set out for indicative purposes some priority sectors that we'll be particularly interested to see. So some of them you'll see on screen now. So transition to clean energy sources in green manufacturing and green agriculture, affordable off-grid energy solutions for rural and remote communities in particular, renewable waste recycling, including but not limited to solar photovoltaic panel waste, new models and innovations for carbon offsets and carbon sequestration, and then finally, creation of green jobs and upskilling opportunities. But I think it's important to emphasise those are indicative areas. We are open to other innovative ideas within the fields of energy, of renewable energy and climate change, providing they're supporting those headline goals. And really, I think in terms of the high priority that we'll be attaching from the Vietnam end to the assessment of proposals that are being developed is really two things. So firstly is policy alignment with Australia's economic development policies. So our COVID-19 response framework and the extent to which projects help to support that broader narrative on promoting Vietnam's resilience, stability, and its ability to build back better from the pandemic. And secondly, and I can't emphasize enough how important this is, because this is not a typical aid program, but the second key thing for us is we really want to see these being viable business models in their own right. So we are not looking for typical just development programs. We are looking for businesses to come to us with real ideas that are going to be commercially viable for you, because at the end of the day, those are the things that are going to be sustainable and that are going to have high impact. And together we believe we can achieve a real shared value together in Vietnam, as we've done in the past, going forward. So I will leave it there, but very happy to respond to questions if there's an opportunity to do so later. So back to you, Sally.
Great. Thanks so much, Robin. Now I'll hand over to Ariane to give you an overview of the application process.
Thanks, Robin and Sally. And apologies, I think many of you are logged in as me, so I feel we know each other already. Thanks for your tolerance with our slight tech glitch there, but it shouldn't preclude you from entering any questions into the Q&A box. Maybe if you are logged in as myself, if it's relevant to the question, just identify as you're posing a question, what organization or type of organization you come from. Thank you. So I'll give a bit more of the detail in terms of the process and requirements. And I just want to assure you, because I'll go through a fair amount of content fairly quickly, that all of this information is on the BPP website, and we'll review the link for that at the end of my presentation. And I do want to say up front, there are a few details about this call for partnership that are different than the standard BPP calls we've done in other countries. So for applicants who have applied in other BPP rounds, please note there are some key differences. And if you are looking at content on the website, just to make sure you're looking at that Vietnam specific content. So in terms of what we're talking about in terms of the types of support, DFAT can provide matching funding to scale these commercially viable ideas with significant social impact that Robin was just describing. The funding range request from DFAT can be from a minimum of $250,000 to $750,000. As mentioned, applicants must match or exceed the BPP funding through cash and or in-kind investment, and we'll dive into that in more detail in a few minutes. And in addition to the financial contribution, the BPP program itself can also support partnerships through independent partnership brokers, business and gender and inclusion advisors throughout the implementation process. So who is eligible? There must be a business partner. Businesses can then apply on their own, or they can apply in consortium with other businesses, with other types of organizations, non-governmental organizations, academia, etc. So it's fairly flexible in terms of what types of partners could work together, but there does need to be at least one business, and the business should be a primary kind of lead in the partnership. And that business must be, registered with an accreditation body in their country. I'll note that the businesses must be able to operate in Vietnam, but businesses can be Australian, international, Vietnamese. So there's no preference for the type of business that can apply. DFAT will undertake a due diligence process with partners before entering contracts. And so we'll talk again a little bit more about that process. There's flexibility in the implementation timeline. The initiatives can range anywhere from a minimum of 1 to a maximum of 3 years. They must be able to get started relatively quickly, be able to start with implementation by June of this year. So that's something to consider, particularly given COVID constraints. So the basics for this application process, there is a proposal requirement with several elements that we will go through. Once applications are reviewed by a panel, there will be a shortlist, and those shortlisted applicants will be invited to meet and discuss the proposals. That'll be a facilitated conversation with the participation of DFAT as well as the applying partners. And that's really a two-way exchange to discuss the proposal, to provide any additional feedback or insight. After those conversations, applicants or shortlisted applicants will have approximately 2 weeks if they want to make any final tweaks to the proposal on the basis of those discussions. And then they would submit their final proposals, which would then be reviewed for final selection. Once selected, the partnerships will kick off in the May period with a set of implementation workshops where the details around work planning, budget, contracting, monitoring and evaluation and ways of working are established to enable that kickoff to implementation by June that I mentioned. So before we get into the details of the application, the key criteria by which we look at the applications and whether they are the right fit for the BPP program. We look at the partnership elements. So indeed, is there a clear role, incentive, and interest from each partner to really be able to be better together, as Sally mentioned. As Robin mentioned, commercial viability is critical. So we're really looking to finance initiatives that can be sustained and scaled beyond the BPP implementation period. What is the social and environmental impact that will be achieved? So that could be, products and services that are brought to new markets. That could be improving productivity or inclusivity within supply chains. That could be supporting adaptation of inclusive business practices within an employee group. And in this case, really looking at climate change adaptation mitigation impacts as well. Gender equality and social inclusion can look at how women and other marginalized populations can be included in terms of economic impact, and also looking at the safeguard elements in terms of if there are any key risks to the proposals and how those risks would be proactively mitigated. I'll say in gender and social inclusion, I think the approach of BPP is very much that an inclusive approach can be positive for the bottom line and not just looked at as a cost, but really in how do you include folks in the supply chains and companies in a way that can achieve long-term sustainable, both commercial and social outcomes. Value for money is really looking at the cost effectiveness. Obviously, there's a lot of competition for DFAT resources, and so why is this a strong investment? We look there at the leverage that companies are putting in, as well as the ability to achieve social impact through that investment. So what kind of beneficiary impact are we looking at? There's a range of proposals. Sometimes there's a smaller number of beneficiaries, but a really significant and deep impact. Other types of initiatives might have a smaller impact across a much wider set of the population. So the basic requirements here, and again, all of this is on the website, but the package is a business plan. We have a business plan template, and essentially we ask you to do a one-page executive summary of your proposal and then a maximum 15-page business plan. Basically, fairly straightforward in terms of what we're looking for, a clear definition of what the purpose is of your initiative, what social or environmental challenge you are trying to address, what is your core business model to address that challenge, what kind of social and environmental impact you expect to achieve, how partners will work together and contribute toward those outcomes. Are there any additional benefit streams that you would see in addition to the core business model? And then what core risks would this initiative entail, both in terms of the partnership and the project itself? So you'll see there's a pretty tight link between those areas and the selection criteria that I just reviewed. The second component is a work plan and budget. There is a template that includes a basic budget framework, as well as a high-level work plan. So I just emphasize here, we know that this is still provisional, but this is really the basics of what would be the key milestones and timing for your initiative. Certainly in that workshop phase that I mentioned for initiatives that would move forward, there would be space to make adjustments to work plan and some of the details of the budget. The applications are submitted through the Smarty Grants portal. So there's a limited amount of administrative information that's also requested on that form. And I do want to highlight there are a few important high-level financial and beneficiary numbers that are requested in that Smarty Grants form itself. So useful to look at those, and also when submitting to make sure that those high-level numbers are consistent with what you have in your work plan and budget and business plan. So the basics, you would create a profile on the Smarty Grants platform. We encourage you to do that with a few days, at least in advance. So if you do run into any technical issues, we can support you in that before the wee hours when the applications are due. You would download the templates that I just mentioned, complete those, upload those into the Smarty Grants portal. So fairly straightforward technically. Again, just do try to log in so that we can support you in any issues. So I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes on co-contribution. We can go into this more in the question and answer. But as mentioned, the co-contribution can be a combination of cash and in kind. I think I won't go through the details here, but we do have more details in our application guidance in terms of the types of things that can be included. Feel free to reach out to our support line if you have any questions about whether or not a specific contribution can be counted. One thing I will note, we've received a number of questions about whether other donors or government can be partners in initiative, and they can, but those types of entities cannot count toward the co-contribution. So a very basic example in terms of the meeting the minimum requirement here is a partnership with a business and an NGO. They are both providing a combination of some cash and some in-kind over the life of the program period. So the business in this case, 60,000 in cash, 20,000 in kind, the NGO, 10,000 in each category. So the cumulative there is 100,000 contribution from the partners, 100,000 from DFAT for a total initiative of 200,000. We go into a bit of detail because this is one of the prime areas where some applications are deemed ineligible and cannot be assessed if they do not meet this minimum requirement. There are a few screening questions that we've included in Smarty Grants as well. Those are not screening out proposals at that stage, but will help us understand better how to proceed with due diligence phase. So we have resources to support. We've tried to make this fairly user-friendly on the website and have all the relevant information. There's a few links to relevant Australian government policy, as Robin summarized, the Vietnam application guidelines. If you're new to the BPP, you also may want to look on the website in terms of examples of BPP partnerships in the past. And the Smarty Grants page really serves as your one-stop shop sort of portal for the application. And I'll just note again that applications at the bpp.com.au, we do respond generally within the same day to any requests. I do also want to turn the camera and just allow my colleague Ha to introduce herself, and she'll be playing a key role in providing this support.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Ha. So I'm the BPP program manager based in Canberra, Palladium, Vietnam area. So my role will be supporting you through the application process of this green recovery route for Vietnam.
Thank you all. So I think we'll go ahead and move to the question and answer. Our colleague Elizabeth has been monitoring the chat and will help to read out questions.
And we've got lots of questions, so thank you everyone for submitting them. If you do think of some now as we're answering, please put them into the question and answer box. The first one, we have a few questions on partners. And so wondering, is it okay for an NGO to be the lead applicant for this call? And also, can government agencies apply to partner with businesses? So what sort of types of partners are we looking for?
Yeah, so we're open to all partners in terms of partnering with the BPP, but there must be a lead private sector partner to lead the partnership. That private sector partner can partner with an NGO partner and also a government partner if they wish as a consortium, but there must be a lead private sector partner within each partnership at the minimum.
And just to restate, if there is a government partner, the government's contributions cannot be counted toward that minimum matching requirement. So if you do have any specific questions, feel free to utilize that applications inbox to see if something would count or not in terms of the contribution.
Great. Second question is on nationality of the entities. So does the business need to be Vietnamese? Can international businesses apply? And in particular, if we are an international business, do we have to have a local partner for this call?
So the BPP is open to all businesses, whether you're an Australian business, a Vietnamese business, or an international business. Any business can apply. We don't have a preference, as Ariane mentioned previously, for any private sector partner. You must be able to operate within Vietnam. So you don't necessarily have to be registered in Vietnam, but you must be able to operate in the country.
Thanks. So we also had a question just asking how many proposals we are looking to select through this call.
So we're looking to select around 4 proposals, but depending on the scope and quality of the proposals and the amount of funding that is sought, there may be an opportunity to support more partnerships than 4. So it just really depends on the scale of the proposals that are coming in.
And when applicants fill out the application through Smarty Grants, do they need to provide any other supporting documents such as letters of support, MOUs, documents to show their co-contribution commitments, anything like that?
We do not have supplementary documentary requirements, and I would just note, please do fill out the business plan format. I know for some pre-existing partnerships, you may have other information, but you really will be assessed based on that information you provide in those core documents. Should you be selected to proceed, there is a due diligence process that does request a number of additional supporting documents in terms of the governance of the partnership and key policies on the company side. So that's a process where we would be working with you to specifically make those requests.
And speaking of financing, we did go through some of the requirements for the co-contribution, but we've had a few people ask just for an elaboration on those requirements and types of co-contributions, maybe some examples, and also whether there's a required maximum percentage or a required percentage for cash and in kind.
So sure, maybe I'll just flip back to the slide I went over relatively quickly. So in terms of types of contributions, so cash are essentially, specific investments by the company that are directly related to the BPP initiative. So that's literally direct investment that they're making to the budget of the initiative. In kind can include human resources. It can include facilities. It can include equipment and services. They should be contributions, again, that are specific to the initiative. So in terms of facilities, for example, we have examples where businesses are building specific facilities, pack houses, training centers, specific to the proposal. And so, and businesses are making space, dedicating space to those initiatives. So that could count. What could not count is kind of, we're in a business, we already have our office space. We're going to count our, full month's office rent for our existing business. That really wouldn't be sort of incremental to the initiative. So that's the thing to think about in terms of in-kind, is really, is this something the business or NGO is putting in that is specifically dedicated to supporting the BPP initiative? Sometimes there are, some gray areas. So again, please do reach out if you have specific questions. And again, this contribution can be over the life of the program. So together, cash and in kind by all of the partners, must at a minimum match the amount you are requesting from DFAT. There is no hard and set requirement in terms of percentage of cash versus in kind, but in terms of competitiveness of proposals, proposals that do put in more cash contribution, and proposals that exceed the leverage and put in more than 1-to-1 or closer to 2-to-1, may be viewed more favorably in that value for money category than proposals that just meet the matching requirement and have everything in terms of in-kind resources. Anything to add on that, Sally?
I think you covered it quite well. Thank you, Ariane.
Thank you. We also have a question about the stage that partners can be at when they apply. So we have an example of someone who is developing water production technology, and they're asking, does our technology need to be already at the commercialization stage in order to apply, or potentially could it be earlier? And in the same vein, we've had some people also ask, does it have to be a large business, or can small businesses also apply? So potentially the stage of the idea and also the size of the business.
So I'll take maybe the size of the business first. We don't have any parameters around the size of the business. So you can be a large business or you can be a small business. We've had different types of businesses ranging from small to medium to large within the BPP partnerships that we have at the moment. And then the second question was around stage of development of your product or service. So we are able to support partnerships that are in the early stage. However, you must in your business plan have a pathway to commercialization. We can agree within the partnership to a stop-go point in terms of whether or not the product is viable to proceed to commercialization as part, if you do have an early a product that is in the early stages. So we have supported some partnerships in the past where we have had products that have been in early stages. So you're able to apply if you have that, but as I said before, you should have a view to how you will be commercial over the period, and that should be clear in your business plan. Do you want to add?
I would just add, if you do look at the BPP website and some of the examples, you'll see a range of different nationalities, types of businesses, and stage. And I'll just note, if you look again at the business plan format, it does really ask you to drill down in terms of what are your core assumptions. So if you are a newer initiative, I think very important to state why you think the market is there, on what basis are you basing the estimates around that market size and demand. If it's from another country example or other, what's your evidence on that, so that the selection panel has a clear idea of why something should merit moving forward if it hasn't been actually tested.
Thanks. We have another question about whether energy efficiency is covered by the call. Is that an eligible area for a concept to be proposed?
Robin, would you like to take this one?
Sure. Thank you for the question. When we were developing the indicative list of areas for this, we did consider energy efficiency because it's obviously a very high priority policy issue for Vietnam at the moment as it thinks through its future energy mix. So I would say two things. Firstly, the list of areas that you will have seen in this presentation are indicative only. So we are open and happy to receive proposals within the renewable energy and climate change sectors that might not be specifically listed on that list if they're very innovative proposals. But the second point I would make is that in the energy space, the energy efficiency space, there is a lot of work going on in this area from different aid program donors and from government itself. So if you were to submit a proposal on energy efficiency, you would have to pitch it in such a way that it would be very different to those ongoing efforts and prove that it's a very innovative, business-focused kind of initiative.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you. We're down to our last question. So if anyone has any last questions they'd like to put in now, please do so. The question is about sort of the focus of the initiatives. We've suggested that initiatives can create sustainable change through creating new products and services, improving productivity in the supply chain, and supporting the expansion of inclusive business practices. The question is whether each initiative has to do all of those things or whether they can focus on one area or another.
So you don't have to do all three. You just need to focus on at least one of those areas.
And sorry, if I can just, we just had another one come in as well on that same topic. And can we also explain what we mean by inclusivity of value chains and inclusive business practices as well?
Sure. So again, I think the one that maybe is most straightforward is a new product or service to a new type of consumer that you need some support in order to be able to access, and then there's a commercial case for that long-term, demand and sustaining that business line. From a value chain perspective, that would be looking at new types of suppliers or buyers in the business. So we have example where, say in the dairy industry, where a business has really been working with large farmers, and then through the BPP, they figure out the model to be able to work with a much larger number of smaller suppliers that are lower income populations. And again, maybe there the business needs some support, or the business works with an NGO that really knows those players very well and can help the business learn and adapt their model in the BPP period to be able to sustainably work with those entities. The supply chain work could also include, providing access or linkages to new types of buyers and markets. So that's anyone that the business is interacting with, but can have impacts in terms of, again, both commercial and social impacts. The inclusive business practices would be, and that could include for this Vietnam round kind of energy and climate related, but that would be more about how a business itself is operating. So say you're a larger business and you want to change the way that you work to, maybe utilize renewable energy in terms of your business itself, change your employee practices in terms of how they're doing work in a way that is, changes and improves the lives of your employees themselves. I'll give an example. I think Robin gave the example in Vietnam of a factory and partnering with an NGO to provide health clinics within a factory. So the benefits there were really to the workers of the company, as opposed to the benefits being, providing access to a new type of consumer. Those categories, again, are largely indicative. There may be things that kind of don't fit squarely, but that's to give you a sense of the range of types of impacts that we're looking at.
And on the inclusivity part, your business initiative or your service might be able to reach more women, for example, or be able to empower them to play a leadership role within your business. It may also look at supporting where those services or products haven't been available to minority groups or disabled people with disabilities. So that's some of the things that we're meaning when we mean inclusivity.
And in the application guidelines on the website, there's a bit more detail on those areas and some examples as well.
Thanks. We've got a couple more now that have come in. The first is whether an applicant would have to have all their partners confirmed at the time of application, or whether they can explore some partners later, or whether the BP could support in helping to source partners or helping to explore those ideas.
Sure. I mean, I think for the selection, you do have to kind of meet the minimum standard in terms of partnerships going forward. There are some cases where the model might include finding additional partners moving forward. But I think you would want to at least have a clear proposal that could advance with the partners that you have. Let me be a bit clearer on that front. If, for example, you had a very clear proposal coming in from a business that wanted to partner with DFAT, you had a clear commercial and social justification, you may have interest, for example, in finding an additional partner that could support in the gender and social inclusion space. And so you could put in the application, here's an area that we would be interested in seeking an additional partner, and even interested in DFAT support to find that partner. But you'd need at that stage of selection to at least kind of meet those minimum standards. So what wouldn't pass muster is if you said, and we see a few of these applications, that's why I'm being fairly specific, is to say, you know, we're an NGO, we want to partner with this type of business, and we think they would provide this kind of cash investment, but we don't know yet which actual business we're going to partner with. That just isn't enough specificity and commitment, because DFAT in this case is making a fairly significant kind of upfront investment commitment to partners.
Thanks. Last one, what sort of role can universities play in BP partnerships? Perhaps do we have an example of a university partnership that we've had prior?
So there has been at least one university partnership previously. So it was for developing a nutritional block for buffalo. So that was a medicated and nutritional block for buffalo, and the university was involved in undertaking the research and development of the product in cooperation and partnership with a business that would then take those results and commercialise them. So that partnership is on our BPP website. It's a 4 seasons partnership with the University of Sydney. And so if you'd like to have a look at how that academia has kind of partnered with business and with DFAT through the Business Partnerships platform, please have a look at that one. So I think that was all the questions that we had today. I thank you very much for your attention and for joining us today. It's been great to have you all, and we look very much forward to your exciting applications coming through. If you have any questions or you think of some that you haven't been able to ask today, please reach out to us at the applications@thebpp.com.au email address, and we will do our best to respond to your questions. Thank you all again, and look forward to working with you.